Hey everyone, Will back from Ava Technologies doing another podcast on AI and technologies. Today, my friend and colleague Matt joined me, which is very kind of him. My other colleague Ben is on holiday, and I didn't want to go another day without doing a podcast. So Matt very kindly stepped in and did it, and it was a really interesting conversation. We covered off a few different things, including Google's new Nano-Banana image generation model. Yes, it's really called that. Then we talked about the leverage paradox, which I thought was a genuinely fascinating thing to talk about, and you'll have to watch to find out what that is if you don't know. We then went through it's not been peer reviewed yet, but a study released by Standard University economists talking about the job market and how it's being affected drastically by AI. Again, another fascinating topic before topping it off, talking about the technical, what we're doing to improve AI, all the different fields of study and how this impacts the development of AI. All under the guise of being talked about how AI doesn't seem to be improving. We would disagree, and we'll talk about why. I do this almost every single day. I try to do it as much as possible, and I post it directly to my YouTube channel as well as the Ava Technologies YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. And here is the podcast.
Thank you for introducing me. So I'm Matthew Spence. I work very closely with Will too on Ava Mind and Ava Technologies. And I've been watching Will and Ben do a really good job of sort of carrying this video content really far, and it's kind of really awesome to be sat on a call and do one with you and see what sort of articles kind of come up and see what ideas kind of come out. So yeah, I'm excited to do this with you.
It's very good. I think undersell yourself, but this format is an interesting one. We just click record, and what's going to happen now, if you have watched it before, but if you haven't, what's going to happen now is I'm going to load up a bunch of articles that we found probably about half an hour ago that's happening in the AI and or technology space. We try to keep it on AI because that's what we do as a company. And then we will give our honest opinion on what we're reading. We'll discuss it a little bit back and forth and look at the bigger picture of how that might impact the wider technology scape. We try to keep it to 5 minutes just so we can move through these articles. We've got 4 today, but if the conversation is good, we will carry it on past. So I will load up the first one if you are ready to look at it. This one is a really good one because I saw it, and I always love AI models when they get released. So this is Google releasing, it's a DeepMind product, so it's from DeepMind, but Google has released it under Gemini, which is their new Nano-Banana model, which is sort of the code name for it. But it's an image generation model that is quite unlike any other, because this one is amazing at retaining subject appearance, which is very typically a poor thing for image models, is that if you send it a picture of yourself and say add glasses to it, you're pretty poor at it. But this model is really interesting because it does it really well. I don't know if this audio will come through, but maybe this will demo it. But yeah, that's the key. You upload a picture yourself and it doesn't lose the subject. What do you think about this?
Well, I think the one thing I really picked up on is they I read this article a little bit closer than some of the others we're going to get into, and I really admired their sort of work on making it contextual, so beyond your first query. Now, if you did make that request for, I want to see glasses on this lady's face, if you then went up with a follow-up prompt and said, amazing, can you make them blue? In a lot of these sort of models with image generation, it quite quickly forgets what the source request was, that you wanted glasses, and it will instead give her a blue dress, or it will make the general theme blue in some fashion. Whereas this latest model, allegedly, and I'll be really interested to try it out my end too, but allegedly it is much better at kind of remembering what sort of prompts you gave it throughout time, so it doesn't lose track as much.
I mean, that's a massive thing, isn't it, within image models, especially because it was a problem with large language models for a while. Is one of the things you could do to test how good a large language model is ask it what the original question is, because very traditionally it's very poor at context following, and because image generation is that much more computationally heavy, it's one of the things that image models had forgotten how to do.
And in some ways, it's not wholly surprising because you know just how much context processing an image must swallow up. In some ways, it's impressive that you can ever retain a memory after it's processed an image that's over 1,000 pixels wide and 1,000 pixels down. Like, can you imagine trying to hold that kind of data in your head, let alone on on a GPU that's trying to process a request all at the same time? Like, it's a lot of compute.
And I absolutely love these kind of models. I think that the use case is going to be wild for it because, again, like go back a couple of years ago, Midjourney was a big player, still is a biggish player. But one of the massive problems with Midjourney is you couldn't like follow on content. You couldn't keep prompting it to get to the result that you want. And even if when you could, again, it was incredibly poor at instruction following, and you couldn't really work with it to guide it into creating like a visual asset that you would want. And this feels like a huge step forward to me, because suddenly if you need to create graphical design or photorealistic content, not only you don't have to try and like one shot it in a really detailed prompt, you can actually work with it to shape it over the course of many prompts, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, and it's going to feel a hell of a lot more natural for a designer when they're sort of picking up a job like this. And
yeah,
you'll have noticed some of the marketing terminology when you followed all the way to Google's own page. It's very much about this replacing Photoshop sort of mentality.
Is it? So I didn't know that. Is that what they're trying to do?
Yeah, well, they're very transparent about it.
Wow. I mean, that is crazy to think. Like, I'm not sure how. Again, I for those who don't know, I started off my career within photography, and everything even then was going through like neural processing on the camera, and then this is just like a whole new avenue. And I think we'll come into this when we talk about the leverage paradox a bit later, but this is essentially what it's describing is the access. I mean, you could be a photographer without ever taking a picture. I mean, that's a crazy sentiment to think about.
It's a crazy idea. Again, like, and this isn't quite risking the conversation we are going to have about the leveraging article, but it does allow you to kind of stand, I think, so much taller and think about wider ideas that would have taken you so much time literally only 5 years ago. Like, if you took your incredible scenic photo on dartboard and then I forgot to actually place my subject in the right part of the photo, and it's like 10 meters in the wrong direction. Well, it's okay. You can very quickly in a single prompt ask your model, okay, can you just move my subject a little bit more to the third line?
Yeah.
I think you still need to have those fundamentals and understanding probably of what a good layout of a photograph is and what's visually appealing. And I think some of that is going to come more intuitively to people. But yeah, you really can't stand on the shoulders of models here.
I think it's incredible technology. I'm not sure. Again, it's one of these big advancements that is a real advancement and really exciting. But with that comes a lot of fear, and it's very true. It's like, I mean, this is a wild advancement, and when you're talking about replacing photographers, replacing graphic designers, you know, that's a lot of people's livelihoods, passions that could potentially be removed. So I'm sure these kind of models getting better and better will be met with criticism as well.
Yeah, I think.
Any final thoughts before we move on?
I almost think we should hit the leverage paradox conversation.
I mean, yeah, we can move on to that if you want. There's no clear structure. That's one of the beautiful things about this podcast is there is no clear structure. So, okay, we'll move on to the leverage paradox, because I think it is an interesting conversation, and I think very nicely all of these articles sort of do lead into each other quite nicely. So let me put this one up on the screen, and I'll give you a brief rundown of what this is about. So this is an article literally titled "The Leverage Paradox," and it's how new technologies decrease the efforts required to perform a task, but it also increases the amount of effort required to remain competitive, which is, a lot of people don't think about this because we talk a whole load about how things like Claude Code or Cursor, they lower the barriers to entry for programming and creating of apps and businesses. And then we just talked about the photography. Suddenly you don't even need a camera to be a photographer, or you need an iPhone, and then you can upload your picture and tweak it to how you want. Again, lowering the barrier to what people can do within their industry. Even within our own business, we think about what's possible with the AI tools now and what we've been able to produce. The whole barrier across the entire market gets lowered. But what this speaks about, and what people don't often think about, is how it ends up making the whole landscape a whole lot more competitive and harder to get into. There's a whole lot more to the leverage paradox, and yeah, I think it'd be great to get your thoughts as well, man.
Yeah, I think this is almost the argument that is presented when people talk about this fear of having key roles replaced, like your photographer and your designer. And it really highlights this point of, yes, maybe everyone can create that foundational photo that's quite popular on Instagram and is trending right now, but you're still going to need to be so competitive. And that does require an element of, I think, persistence and experience and intuition from individuals, not a model. A model is always going to inherently, at least with a lot of models out there anyway, are going to inherently try and do the most average thing, even with every request that you ask of it. So it still requires you to push forward on anything fresh, new, or with a particular job that requires experience. I mean, there's only one way you're actually going to offer that. I think this really plays on a good balancing view.
I think that this particular area of the article is really interesting. I didn't know about it. And I thought it's just a really interesting sentiment that back in the 1930s, economist John Maynard Keynes predicted that because of automation, that we would actually dwindle down and end up only working like 15-hour work weeks by pretty much like today. And now we're almost 100 years down the line. This is what the article puts out there, and yet we're actually working statistically way harder than anybody did it in the 1930s. We work longer hours, not necessarily as much physical work, but certainly longer hours. And this is because, and what the core to the leverage paradox is that these advances are available to everybody, and within our own human nature, we want to remain competitive. And the purpose of work isn't just to do better, it's to do better than everybody else. And in order to do that, you have to go that extra mile, because suddenly what once was a skill set is now ultra accessible. It's no longer a skill set. Everyone can do it. And and that I think presents ourselves in the work that we do as well. So before Ava Mind, and still a little bit to support the development of the startup as well, is we do a lot of consulting work and software development for clients. And what happens, we've seen it as well. What happens when people can start using these tools to try and do the job that we can do? Our skill set is a lot more accessible than it was 5 years ago. And what does that mean for our role? What does it mean for starting a business? It's a particularly interesting conversation point.
It definitely allows, I think, almost everyone involved to kind of expand what their role needs to be. I mean, only 5 years ago, you'd be managing so much in one small sliver of the company that it would only make sense for your role to be that wide. Whereas I think, I think with this, it allows you to slim down your team, but it also empowers your existing members to contribute more and think of wider ideas. Comes with its own risks. You can't overreach, but I think this can optimize smaller and smaller teams. That's especially relevant for us with our sort of venture.
I think that we have to just generally rethink about what the landscape will look like to run a business and start a business and build apps. What will that look like in 5 years, especially if we're getting past the point where people can go in there and actually build with little coding knowledge, or at least a very decreased level to what was needed five years ago, even 3 years ago. If we can make that call now, then hopefully, as this article echoes again, is those people that understand that intuitively and intellectually will be the ones that make it to the top of the escalator that keeps getting harder to get to the top of and taller. It's very interesting. It's very interesting.
Well, that right there is an interesting note in itself. I mean, yes, you might be able to achieve so much more on utilizing these models and helping your team grow beyond a point, but trying to actually bring on anyone new into your team when you need to could actually be more of a challenge, because they don't know what you're using to leverage up into a stronger position.
What do you think of this area of the article? I thought this was quite funny. I got drawn into the to the Claude to the Claude statement, but have a read of that, and then I'll read out the bit below.
Yeah, I actually saw this one pop up on my X not too long ago.
Yes, boy, it was beautiful.
Yeah,
I think again, so that resembles basically what we've got here. Is like we're in a world where we can all produce beautiful blog posts, social media images, lifelike videos, and now half-baked apps really quickly. And I think this is the key to trying to understand how to deal with it. Is although you can do it, the lion's share of it, the vast majority of it is just utter, as this article says, slop. And therefore, that would have been acceptable before all of this, but now it's not. So the quality that you have to output is a lot better, not just in the product that you produce, but the idea that you're actually trying to create as well. It has to be very good. It changes what's considered quality.
Yeah, it's a very double-edged sword, because anything you now produce, when you've got the tool of AI next to you, the onus is on you to actually not be so wasteful with the time and energy that you put into building what you're building. And part of that is, if you're using this to code and vibe code a platform of some description, it's on you to make sure it not just works, but it's unique and it's competitive and it's valuable to who you're building it for. And it's double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah, again, be the purple cow. That's basically what you're saying. Is you gotta stand out and use it. Yeah, very, very interesting. Any last thoughts before, because we've been talking about this one for about 10 minutes now. Any further thoughts on this, or shall we move on to the next one?
I think, well, to be honest, no, just bridging. I think the next article that would make sense after this one would probably be the one talking about entry level and how hard it is to actually get into some of these industries. Seems like a good natural pivot.
Let's do it. Let me pull it up. Again, this is actually quite nice. This is all timed up really well. They all do sort of lead into each other. I didn't really think about it until we started talking about it. We've spoken about, Ben and I have spoken about this on the podcast a few times, which is obviously what's happening. We sing the praises of AI because it is amazing. It's incredible technology. But also I think it's important to talk about the potential downsides and what we should be looking out for. And this is what we've spoken about a couple of times because we keep seeing headlines on it, is that there is bigger and bigger evidence that AI is starting to disrupt the job market big time, and stopping people, getting jobs. And this is the latest one. It's a paper that's just been released. It's key to note it hasn't been peer reviewed yet, but it's by what university was it? One second. It was thought it was Stanford University economists. They released the paper on it, and this is really interesting. Basically, if there was evidence that the job could be automated and replaced, then those jobs are not likely to exist, or young people going into them will not be able to access them. However, what was a really key insight for me, and it says it right here, at the same time, the economists found that evidence in fields where AI can help people in their work rather than replace them, employment of young people is actually improving. So that's a really interesting thing. If it can be automated, jobs are going to be gone. If it's going to aid you, it's improving your work prospects. What do you think about this?
Well, that last note, I'll be very interested to kind of hear if you've heard any anecdotal stories to support that, or perhaps there might be some further down in this article. And that is a unique take that you don't often see, I think, with a lot of these conversations around employment and AI. Because I think a very standard view that perhaps you guys have already mentioned before, yourself and Ben, but maybe not, is just this sort of perspective that if you are a young person trying to get into an industry that has a lot of AI present already in it, it actually becomes so much harder to sort of introduce yourself as capable and demonstrate your capability, because you can't build up the experience with some of the peers that might then employ you. Because a lot of the work that you would do is replaced by AI. There's less of a need to bring in an intern and do what I think would be considered, I suppose, slop work within a company. But that's one perspective, that's one lens to view it through. And I do see the word anecdotal just there.
Yeah, there is anecdotal. So we'll get to that. But I think this graph is very interesting to see how the shift has changed since 2021. This is particularly within software development, but also the age of people, getting into that. And I think this speaks, again, none of this has been peer reviewed or thought about, on emerging patterns. But my initial instinctual reaction when I see a chart like this is seniority. Here is the age where you'd be a junior developer. Whereas up here, you'd be experienced. You'd be a senior developer. You've got a lot further down that career path. But this entry level job, again, the people that would be doing what I think you and I would probably agree something like Claude Code can do, it's dropping off. And as you can see, it does genuinely go beautifully with the age groups. Fantastic. I mean, it's so interesting to see, and I think this is directly attributed, again, when you look at a graph like this. I mean, how can it not be attributed to AI usage over time? I mean, literally here, 2021, 2022, 2023. So just before 2023, when ChatGPT came out, everything was on par. And then all of a sudden, since ChatGPT and other coding tools started to develop, it's gone down and down and down and down for what I'm guessing is going to be entry-level jobs at the 22 to 25 age.
And it is notable that Stanford does caveats within the article that this is about, this is rather timed with some of the turbulent activity that's kind of affected a lot of Western economies anyway. But it's hard to ignore the fact that AI has met so closely the same timeline, and it's just so damn likely that it's part of the equation, really, in some capacity. But
here you go. Here's another chart for this time not software development but customer service representative. Same pattern. ChatGPT comes out, entry level. What I would consider an entry level age of 22 to 25, going up in the ages. What would probably be on the front line of customer service, that job counts down. Again, when you're at this age, 35 to 40, 41 to 49, there's a slight gap, but still relatively on par with each other, where I'd guess is where you'd end up in customer service, where when you go, can you call the manager? You'll be the manager. So these higher level jobs, I think, are the ones that are staying, the people with more knowledge. But again, it's true. I think so many companies, at least the ones we've talked to within our client sphere, have piloted or are piloting AI solutions, AI customer service to replace, and make and streamline their customer service operations. So it does make sense anecdotally.
I'm still waiting, just scanning through, and I might have missed it as you were going down, but I'm looking for the anecdotal that supports younger workers still being in a good position.
Does it say that? I mean, this is one of those kind of depressing articles.
It comes off rather depressing. But do you recall further up when we were talking about? I think it might have been a little bit further up, maybe above the last graph.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Here we go. At the same time, the economists found evidence that in fields. I haven't seen anything that actually then supports that the young person's experience is actually improving. Those graphs do not indicate that.
No, well, it's again, I'm trying, as we've been talking, I've been trying to think of like a field where AI particularly aids you, doesn't necessarily replace you. Maybe again, like anything grounded in the physical reality. I think AI can use, like the healthcare space, for example, is that doctors, nurses, and clinicians can use software to diagnose and find, but at the end of the day, it aids it. They're not going to do the job afterwards. This isn't mentioned in the article.
But then to be fair, I think you've hit the nail, because when you go down, I can actually see these graphs are attributed to software developers. I missed that when we were going down.
Oh yeah, software developers, and then this one's customer service representatives.
Yes, still a similar trend, it seems, but it doesn't seem as sharp as software development. But I think you've probably hit the nail on the head. Anything that's probably in the healthcare sector or anything physical, there still needs to be a person who's responsible and liable for the decisions that are made in a lot more of a way than it probably is in our sort of world.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That actually lines up a little more.
It's again. What's always fascinating is whenever I hear people in this space talking about the job crisis that will inevitably come with AI is no one particularly has an answer to it. I think lots of people are just watching patterns evolve, and I think a lot of what will happen will have happened by the time we do anything about it. I think one of the key things that we should do is try and upskill people and try to encourage them into, again, like as you saw in those trends, if you assume all the peer reviewing checks out and those graphs are overwhelmingly geared towards actually the state that the more senior the role, the reason you're more senior in that role is because you have a more in-depth knowledge. It requires you to know more to be able to steer the ship in that kind of role. Then we should focus on upskilling people to do those jobs. So that entry-level software developer job will just become fundamentally irrelevant. But again, I don't have an answer either. I'll let you know when I do. But it's again like even the biggest names in this space, they don't know. They don't have an answer. They don't have an answer to what this will be. I don't know whether that's worrying or not. Really, I think everyone's just plowing towards a future without necessarily knowing how to deal with the problems on the other side.
I think a level of uncertainty probably is actually more on the reassuring side right now, but there are some people that just want to know. Is my job going to be safe in 5 years? And I think that's probably the wrong way around to approach it. Instead, it's much safer to be thinking about how can I best embrace these emerging technologies and utilize them? And you'll probably find that that's a stronger pathway to take. But no one knows. You're right. And I think the most interesting article we've gone through so far probably is the leveraging paradox and the balancing view. I think that actually can offer you there might be abundance of offerings and services because of AI, but you need to have an element of competitiveness. Although not in every industry, maybe not so much in healthcare, for example. That might be more of a blanket approach, but I don't know. Very balancing articles I think we've actually gone through.
100%. Well, and this is the last one that we'll quickly load it up, which again leads in quite nicely. Let me just change where we're sharing and then add it back to the screen. This one is a counter argument to an article that Ben and I covered last week, I think, which is a report came out where it actually said that AI is useless. We're not progressing anymore, and that actually it's only 5% of businesses that have tried it have found any use in it. And this is a counter argument, and I think it's really easy to refute anecdotally that statement that AI isn't useful to businesses, because again, when we're getting these economic papers coming out measuring trends, we already know in the tech sphere there's several of the largest tech companies in the world have made huge layoffs, which they themselves have attributed directly to AI. It's really hard to refute, to defend a position where you say that only 5% of people, of businesses find AI useful. This all comes off the back of GPT-5 coming out and people being fairly underwhelmed by its impact. I don't know if you've had a chance to try GPT-5, what your thoughts are on it.
I have, and I've actually found it to be a little bit lazier than some of the other cutting edge models that are kind of available. But then that is strictly within the realms of coding. So I haven't explored other sort of utility. But you can sort of understand that sort of perspective, I think. I would be curious what kind of key insight you and Ben came to a conclusion of with your last article before delving into this one.
For me, it was much reading the article. It was much more of an opinion piece on people that were underwhelmed by the fact that the whole argument still on the fact that we're hitting a pinnacle, really, that although it is improving, it's improving at a much slower rate. Like the jump between GPT-3 and GPT-4 was absolutely night and day groundbreaking. Whereas the jump to between GPT-4o and GPT-5, less so. Same things with the Claude models for coding, Claude Code, running Claude Sonnet 3.5. The jump to Claude 4, it was noticeable, but not a huge amount. You could still go back to using Claude 3.5 and it'd probably do a good job. And even more noticeably, the difference between Opus, Anthropic's biggest frontier model, and Sonnet is actually purportedly very little difference. Having tried both, it's hard to tell the difference, to be honest with you. They are very quite similar. And this is
like I was going to say, I do have a hot take for you here.
Yeah, go for it. No, hit me with a hot take.
No, it's a hot take that I don't think is necessarily true right now, but I do think might carry some weight in the near future, potentially, if not now. But it's just this idea when we're hitting these new thresholds of models that are beyond beyond utility that you're currently using it for. So maybe it's a coding task, maybe it's working away an image of a lady wearing glasses, whatever the task might be. It might be a case that the model is actually just so much more capable than the task that you're always using it for. And along the training approach, it might actually just lose a little bit of sensibility about those sort of smaller tasks, less intelligent, in quotation mark, sort of tasks. Whereas if you ask GPT-5 something really technical, then it does seem to do a lot better about recalling that information or, again, in quotation marks, computing the answer to the deeper question you asked. And that's the hot take. Maybe some people will become sort of become outpaced by it, and that's why it's harder and harder to sort of really see the difference.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think there's a couple of little things there with noticing the difference between these newer models. Is in terms of an intelligence level, I think there's not much difference between GPT-4o and GPT-5. I mean, they've both seen vast amounts of data, the same data sets, if not growing. You know, the knowledge is definitely, it knows almost anything you could ask it, apart from the hardest questions in the world. You know, what model Frontier Labs are really focusing on, Anthropic is a key supporter of this, is having it follow long instruction sets and operate for a long time. You know, go away and do a task for 25 minutes and report back, instead of this sort of back forth sort of chatting approach. It's gives you a task and then you check in 30 minutes. That's what we're trying to improve now. And actually, again, completely anecdotally from my experience, is Claude Sonnet 4 is very, very good in following instruction for a long time over 3.5, which would be a bit more like change this, change that. You could give it an implementation, Claude Sonnet, an implementation plan, and it could run for about 15 minutes probably, and execute that plan without really losing sight of the context in which it started on. So I think it's trying to improve a lot of areas. It's not just how intelligent it is, but also on your second point is we will hit a point, where what you need it for day to day, you're not going to notice a difference. Like the intelligence level is going to go in the most frank and blunt way possible. It's going to surpass your level of what you need, and therefore you're not going to notice. It's going to be an unnoticeable difference to you.
That's probably the crux of my argument.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's what makes it so much harder to, I think, for a layman to sort of detect the difference. And that probably is the crux of my argument. The intelligence argument, like you are right on the sense it's definitely getting a lot more broad. The sort of areas that they're going to be targeting, because as a general intelligence, not much difference.
Yeah. I think when people talk or complain about models and how good they are, how not good they are, they're forgetting that the whole idea of frontier models, especially as you're working towards AGI, is the amount of problems and areas of improvement that these models can have is vast. I mean, you can name so many areas that you can improve and tweak as you move towards AGI. I think, again, if you booted up ChatGPT 3.5 or 3, going back to 2022, and used it, it's a bit like the Porsche model, I think, where again, like a Porsche 911 from 20 years ago, you're gonna see the difference big time. But this year's Porsche or next year's Porsche is going to look very similar to the previous years. Same with the iPhone. You don't see much difference year on to year, but if you actually go back 5 years, you can see a massive difference. Same thing, I think, is that we're slowly tweaking all these different problem areas. We're solving issues and improving it in minute ways. And you only really notice the difference if you try and boot up a model from a long time ago.
And then the only other difference that comes to mind is just whatever training material that they're changing or bringing into the picture. But this is where I want to personally work a little more on is understanding where its scopes sort of end.
Yeah.
And where it potentially risks sacrificing one subject criteria for another. Yeah, I'm deeply interested in that as the next.
Yeah,
it
is a fascinating field. Yeah, the whole pre-training. I think we've again, it's so frontier that it is still all anecdotal, and the research papers are very like bleeding edge on it. But we're hitting a point where pre-training is not so efficient anymore, and it's sort of it's a diminishing return. We can't just keep chucking more training compute at it and get a better output. It's a lot more in the research fields focusing on the post-training, the post-training stages of it, whether that's reinforcement learning through human feedback or again steering it with fine-tuned data. And again, like the whole tooling and the whole tool market is a big one as well, and unhobbling the model to make it more intelligent by giving, again, you can give internet access to Qwen 0.6b, a tiny model, and suddenly it's a lot better at understanding context than it would be on its own, because how can you be the best person, and you can have the best person in the room and be an expert in your domain, but if you don't have the tools to do it, like you're always going to have a ceiling. So it's just, I mean, there's so many different areas of AI and of neural networks. There's even new architectures being developed to to move away from sort of the GPT architecture, to make it smaller and more efficient. I don't think it's feasible to know the difference between one generation and the next. I think it's only if we load up one from 5 years ago will we know.
Yeah. I think that will kind of hit the mark.
This has been a long one. I've just realized we've been recording for 35 minutes. This has been a good one. We've had a lot to talk about. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Matt, is there any last thoughts before we call it a wrap?
No, just looking forward to the next one. I think I'll want to read the report by Stanford a little bit closer, but otherwise, I think it's continue to watch this space, and I look forward to doing another review of you soon.
Yeah, it's good. It's very interesting. I really enjoyed this one because, again, like, Ben is in marketing, whereas you're in tech, so it's a totally different take and a totally different perspective on artificial intelligence, and that's another thing, again, that I've echoed on this podcast a few times with Ben, is this technology is so exciting because of the amount of areas that it actually permeates. It's bringing together the economic, the philosophical, the social, all these different areas. People in marketing are just as affected and interested in it as people are in technology. It really permeates the fabric of our society, which is why it's so interesting.
Yeah, and so relevant.
So relevant. So normally Ben will wrap it up, but I will wrap it up today. So I'll say like and subscribe if you've enjoyed. We do this podcast every single day, or at least try to, bar weekends. So don't forget to check in again. And thanks, Matt, for joining me, and see you next time.
See you next time.